Welcome, everyone, to this month's edition of Advocacy Insights. Before I introduce you or welcome you to this session and introduce you to Doug Farquhar, our Government Relations Director, I wanted to just highlight a couple NEHA events. So, as you may know, this is Women's History Month. And in honor of that, NEHA is going to be launching a series of webinars starting next month that will be focusing on women and environmental health, which is becoming a larger and larger demographic for us. So after I'm done speaking, I'll post some more information about that webinar series in the chat. Also, wanted to remind you that our annual educational conference is coming up in July. Early bird deadline for that conference is going to be in April, so that's coming up here pretty soon. Make sure that you sign up for that before that deadline so you can save. It's around $200 that you can save if you sign up. And I'll post more information on that as well. So now I will turn you over to Doug. Doug, take it away.
Thank you very much, Heather. I greatly appreciate it. As many of you know, this has been an incredibly busy year, or busy month in Washington, D.C. The Congress has passed a continuing resolution. They are working on a reconciliation to get the Trump agenda passed. The administration has continued to try to thin out the government ranks at the federal level. And today they are in the process of trying to close down the Department of Education. So there's been a lot of activity, and we will get to it all. So first thing, I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you can see the first slide there, and let's get started. First of all, as I often have said, and I want to kind of reiterate this throughout all my Advocacy Insight messages, that environmental health is primarily a state and local activity. Majority of the stuff we are going to be seeing and going on really occur at the local level. And it is something that I will keep track of. In fact, today, what I want to do is talk about food safety at the federal, state, and local level. I began with giving a good overview of what is going on in Congress. At that point, I really wanted to focus on foods, what's happening in the food sector, what's happening with FDA, and then what's going on at the state and local level regarding food safety. So where do we sit right now? Well, the 119th Congress so far has not passed the fiscal year 2025 budget. It passed a continuing resolution. That kept the fiscal year 2024 numbers continuing until next September. At that point, they will have to adopt a new budget, or the government will shut down. What that means is that everything is going to continue as is. They did some shifting out there. And what I mean by that is they added more money to Department of Defense. They added some more money to Homeland Security for border security. And they took that money from Department of Education, from Medicaid, and from EPA. So there is some shifts that have gone out there, but for the most part, the budgets from 2024 will remain throughout 2025. So we aren't going to see any big changes there. That being said, the administration has a policy, and they really are making a strong effort to say, well, once the money's been appropriated, it's up to us to figure out where we want to put it. And within that purview, they are making some very significant changes out there. Programs that were to be funded under EPA, the administration is trying to pull those dollars and put it towards something else. Programs that were supposed to go to USAID, we all know though that money has been pulled back. So the administration is still being quite aggressive with what it is, what its authority is under the terms of impoundment. What that means is, can they impound the funds that Congress has already allocated and shift it to programs that they want? According to the 1974 Impoundment Act, the president can't, doesn't have that authority, and according to the Constitution, they don't. However, the Trump administration has been very aggressive to push the limits of these, and so far has been successful. Now, what this really comes down to is an interesting fact where Trump is trying to implement certain things like DOGE, like cutting agencies like the Department of Education, like cutting programs like the clean air funding from EPA, which they don't have the authority to do. The Constitution is very clear that the Congress has authority to tax and spend, not the president, and their decisions are what take precedent. So the Congress has adopted and passed a law to implement and create a Department of Education. Trump administration really doesn't have the authority to take it back. They have the Congress has the authority to dictate where funding will go. Trump administration really doesn't have the authority to shift it around. What that means is, even though he can cause a lot of problems in the long run, meaning at the end of the 4 years, there's no authority to keep it going. Basically, when at the end of the Trump administration, the Department of Education will come back because Congress passed a law on it. The funding for USAID will come back because Congress already authorized this. Programs within EPA, other programs that we are seeing that are cut, they will most likely come back because Congress has already authorized them. Programs that Congress didn't authorize, ones that have been done by executive order, Trump does have the authority to repeal them, to pull them back. However, we'll see if that next administration continues his programs, or if they simply, the next administration repeals them. Right now, we're still in the same boat we were a month ago in a lot of respects. We don't have the Trump agenda. The reconciliation was scheduled to get on the president's desk by April 3rd. They've now pushed it back to Memorial Day. That's still considered quite ambitious. The Senate has not agreed on a number with the House. The House did pass a number back in late February of what they wanted to move forward with reconciliation. However, the Senate hasn't agreed to it. And there's a lot of machinations going on between the House and Senate before they're going to get to a number that they can agree on, and also what they can include in reconciliation, which we'll discuss in the next slide. But right now, the Trump administration, even though they have the Republicans have the majority in the House and the Senate, that authority is very weak. They only have a 3-seat majority in the Senate, far below the 60-seat that they need to pass a bill without a filibuster. They only have 1-seat majority right now because of the way things are set up in the House, meaning it would only take one or really two congressmen to really gum up any of these policies or any of these programs. So it's still very, very tight. And what's coming up? Well, not only do we have reconciliation, which would pass the Trump agenda, which would pass the Trump tax cuts, we also have a debt ceiling coming up. The debt is already at 36.1 trillion. Congress needs to vote to increase that to keep government open. They probably going to need Democratic votes to do that. And the Democrats are very low to support the Republican agenda until they get this Doge thing figured out and they're not laying off and firing federal workers, and they're not allowing Trump to exceed his authority. So it's going to be, we still have a very rocky road ahead. What is budget reconciliation? What is that going through? Well, for that to move forward, well, first of all, reconciliation allows budget policy, budgets basically, to move forward with simple majority in both the House and the Senate. Getting a simple majority in the House is pretty simple. In the Senate, normally you have to get a 60-person majority because of the filibuster rule. With reconciliation for budgets, you only need to have a simple majority, but it can only apply to budgets. It can only apply to the amount of money Congress spends or the amount of taxes. So there's a lot of activities that can fall into that, but it can't address everything. They cannot do things like repeal the Department of Education under reconciliation. It's not a budgetary issue. They can't go forward and impose a lot of the stuff that Doge wants to do, like removing federal programs, because that's a policy change. What they can do is they can cut the budget to those programs, because that is a budgetary decision, and that is very likely to move forward. They also can do taxes. If many of you remember, the Affordable Care Act under Obama was passed via reconciliation. The reason they were able to do that is because reconciliation was because the ACA was considered a tax. By making it a tax, it was able to move forward under reconciliation, according to the Senate parliamentarian. The Senate parliamentarian had quite a bit of authority to determine what is allowable and what is not allowable in reconciliation. Another thing about it is it can only affect the budget. It can't be, you can't add policy riders to it. You can't add things, and you can't do anything to affect Social Security, meaning you can't eliminate taxes on Social Security like Trump has promised through reconciliation. It needs to go through the full 60-vote Senate. Funding for the border wall. Well, they can do that because if they make it mandatory, if they make it discretionary, it won't be able to make it through the parliamentarians' limits. But if they make it mandatory, then they could get that passed through reconciliation. But the bottom line is to fund government, to make official fiscal year 25 and official fiscal year 26 budget. You're going to have to get the 60 votes in the Senate, which means there's going to have to be some negotiations. Other problems out there for reconciliation comes up with the deficit. To offset the increase to the deficit to allow for the tax cuts, meaning they're going to have to do a $4.5 trillion. They want to do 4.5 trillion in tax cuts, which means they're going to have to require like 2 trillion in savings and another 2.6 trillion in additional revenue. That additional revenue could come in via tariffs, or it could come in via economic growth. But those limitations do have to occur, or it's going to explode the deficit, and it's going to make it very difficult for many conservative and Tea Party Republicans to vote for that. They've already said they won't. To make that numbers, it is going to mean that the Energy and Commerce Committee is going to have to cut Medicaid. They oversee Medicaid. Right now, they need to reduce it $88 billion a year, or $880 billion over 10 years. To do that, they're going to have to make steep cuts into Medicaid. That's going to be a tough thing for both Republicans and Democrats to accept. But there's no other way for them to move forward without such draconian cuts. Regarding my final comments regarding that, before I move on to FDA, is that the debt ceiling, we should hit it by this summer. It's something that's going to have to be addressed somehow, but there's not a real path forward at this moment. FDA's food program. Let's talk about foods. It is undergoing a great transition ever since the debacle with infant formula. Congress and the administration, both administrations have been very critical of FDA and the way they address human foods. Mind you, as many of you know, that FDA oversees 88% of all human foods. They're supposed to be regulating it. It is a very difficult program for them to do. FSMA, which was passed 14 years ago now, required additional inspections to occur, mainly for foreign distributors. The Congress said to meet that was going to take 1,500 inspectors. Currently, FDA only has 446 or 5 inspectors at this point, and they're losing them all the time. So they are really unable to do what Congress has laid out for them to accomplish. As you note here, FDA oversees 3.9 trillion worth of food, tobacco, and medical supplies. The difference is under the tobacco and medical. There's a user fee which offsets some of the federal funds. When it comes to human foods, 99% comes from Congress. FDA regulates products, regulated products, 18% of imports and 18% of exports. This has been the huge transition that has occurred over the past 30 to 40 years. Is back in 1980, very few products, even agricultural products, came in from overseas. Now we got, I can't say a vast majority, but a huge number do come in. Almost all the winter fruits and vegetables come in from overseas. We can see berries and strawberries in our grocery stores year round. We see bananas year round. That's because of the increase in imported foods. That all has to be inspected by FDA. What's going on right now? Well, they created the Human Foods Program. They merged several different centers, including CISPAN, into a single center, and they put Jim Jones in charge of it. Last month, as many of you know, Jim Jones said, with the reductions in staff and resources, I will not be able to do this job, and stepped down. Right now, it looks like Kyle Diamantis is going to step in that role. He is going to be he is right now Deputy Acting Commissioner of Human Foods. That was formerly headed by Susan Main. There are still some other slots to fill, such as the basically Human Foods Program, or CISPAN. The Trump administration needs to find somebody, or basically FDA needs to find someone to take over that program, and also the Office of the Chief Scientist. That is open at this point. Dr. Makari, a Johns Hopkins physician, an academic, has already gone through the process, will be our next FDA commissioner. And it's likely that he will promote Kyle Diamantis from the deputy acting commissioner to the full commissioner. So that's how it looks like FDA is playing out. The Human Food Program, which Kyle is going to be overseeing, we've got the Office of Microbiological Food Safety, Office of Food Chemical Safety, and Nutrition Center of Excellence. All these are going to have to be staffed up. What was going on during Jim Jones's time is, even at that time, he was planning to pull money that had originally gone to state and local health departments or state and local for state and locals to do food safety inspections. We're pulling that back to fund these programs. With that pullback with the new administration, we don't know what's going to happen. How are they going to administer this? What they're going to move forward with is very much an unknown. But what we do see is that FDA's Human Food Program does only a small part of the inspections. 2.2 million inspections done annually are done by the state and local health departments. That's where the activity is, which means we need to have funding to make sure that that is able to occur, especially now what's going on at FDA with less resources. So it's going to be very difficult for FDA to complete its mission or to do anything without funding to support state and local programs. Where does the Human Foods Program focus its attention? Well, much of it is on 37% is on produce. They deal with many other issues, as you can see, nuts, fish, dairy, multi-ingredient foods, but produce is one of their largest areas. They also do half of manufactured foods. And interesting for us, they don't do retail food. They rely on this to fund the state and locals to do all retail food safety inspections. That means that we're still in our state and locals are still in a good spot to continue those activities, regardless of what goes on at the federal level. However, there's no doubt that the federal support is very, very important. Compliance. They did 4,341 actions over the past 7 years. I'm sorry, 7 years. And they have made a variety of recommendations, but that's much less than what we saw the state and locals accomplish over that same period of time. Number of facilities. I want to look at the one line here that says human foods. 87,252 domestic facilities have to be inspected. 134,368 foreign facilities have to be inspected. And this is over a 5-year period, which means a total of 221,000 facilities have to be inspected. As was noted, the FDA doesn't have the ability has very limited ability to actually make that happen without the help of the state and locals. As you can see, the other registered facilities, animal drugs, biologic, foods, human drugs, medical device, tobacco, is only a handful, maybe a tenth of what has to be done by Human Foods. Human Foods is by far the largest set of facilities that need to be inspected by FDA. The inspections dashboard, as you can see here, when it comes to foreign, it's gone up somewhat. It's been lagging this year. Domestic, that's where we've really seen a crash. We have gone from a height of 18,000 facility inspections a year down to 2,000. That is unsustainable, and there's no way that FDA is going to be able to complete its mission without being able to get the state and locals out there or invest much greater numbers in their own health inspectors to get out there. What I'm want to highlight here is the second line here. You can see all the different budgetary issues, but I've been looking at the FDA Human Foods budget. It is considering staying about the same, about 1.182 billion. The Senate I'm sorry, the House was asking for a little less, like 1.79 billion. The Senate wanted a little bit more. That was under Democrats. Now that the Republicans have taken control, it may get a little bit more reduced, but it's not a draconian cut where you're seeing 10 to 20 to 65% cuts like we're seeing in other federal agencies. FDA remains supported by Congress. It's been the state and local programs that have not been supported by the FDA under the efforts that they had to reallocate money. We'll see how that all ultimately plays out. And again, this just gets more detail, but I wanted to talk about the fiscal year 25 budget. This is all moot now. We are going forward with the fiscal year 24 numbers, which is 1.198. What we are going to end up seeing in fiscal year 25 is 1.198. It's going to stay the same. For fiscal year 26, it's going to be an open door. We don't know what Congress is going to do. We don't even know what the president is going to request. So that is all up in the air. But I want to emphasize that Congress has been supportive of FDA's Human Foods Program, even though they've been highly critical. So let's go on to the states. As I said before, this is where the action is. When you take a look at the states, all 50 of them are in legislatures, or all 50 of them are in session this year. We can expect about 170,000 bills to be introduced and about 10 to 20% to pass. The success rate is going to depend on the state. As you can see, a vast majority of states are one-party systems. Either you're all Republicans, meaning the House, Senate, the governor's office, or they're all Democrats. We have very few split states out there. It's getting more common. A few years ago, we only had one or two. Now we're looking at close to 10 or maybe a dozen. But a vast majority of the states are single party, which means it's not going to be a partisan issue that's going to block a bill or allow a bill to move forward. It's going to be a policy issue, whether they can get the votes for it. What are we seeing out there? Environmental health legislation in 2025. I've already been able to track over 1,000 bills in the 50 states that deal with environmental health. That means body art, climate change, drinking water safety, food safety, indoor air quality, wastewater. These are the big ticket items I've been tracking, and that's what we are seeing out there. Already we've had 442 bills introduced on food safety, 72 of the bills on food freedom. Now, of those 72 bills, vast majority wants to expand the deregulation of food safety oversight. However, we do have one bill, a bill in Indiana, which is designed to increase food safety oversight of food freedom or cottage food operations. So it's kind of an interesting bill. We have seen that occur in other states. Texas tried to do something 2 years ago. Mainly, they're identifying that these cottage food operations, farmers markets that aren't regulated, whatnot, we're having a problem there. We're starting to see foodborne outbreaks. We want to make sure that that this situation doesn't get out of control. So we're starting to see some pushback, albeit very small, but some pushback to the food freedom movement. We also see 9 bills out there on microenterprise kitchen. I consider this a subset of the food freedom movement, but this allows people to create, produce, and sell products from a non-commercial kitchen, one that has not been formally determined as a commercial kitchen. Many states do require it to be inspected, even though I know that there's a big pushback on that angle. But it is something that is gaining traction out there and becoming more popular in the states. Food additives, that's an emerging issue. We never saw that before really very often before the nomination of Robert Kennedy to head HHS. It is now becoming more popular, whereas in the past, I would see a bill or two in New England, maybe New York, regarding food safety, food additives. Now I'm seeing them in states like Kentucky, Oklahoma, Texas. A lot of the red states are introducing legislation, and some of this legislation is pretty progressive in the sense of saying no food additives shall be added to school lunches. That would be a major shift in what happens in the school lunch program in that state. But that is a very popular item, one I haven't seen before, or seen this much activity before this year. Body art, 117 bills out there dealing with body art. 42 of them deal with acupuncture. Acupuncture is a huge issue. It was last session. It continues to be this session. There's a lot of questions about how it should be regulated or how it should be allowed to be used. Piercing or tattooing, that's pretty active out there. This is less so on the health side and more so on, do you need to be licensed? What licensing do you need? What kind of credentialing do you need? When can you do that? In the past, the only time we really saw bills on piercing and tattooing were bills to prohibit underage kids, underage people from getting a tattoo. Those bills have somewhat faded off, and now we're seeing more on the health, the certification, the training requirements for piercers and tattoo artists. Drinking water, 216 bills out there on drinking water. Many of them deal with the drinking water revolving fund. How do we get funding out to different local drinking water authorities? What would we allow them to use the revolving fund for or not? We're seeing quite a bit out there on PFAS. States are moving forward on PFAS regardless of what the federal government is doing. Right now, it's very much in limbo what the federal government's doing or going to be able to do with the reductions in staff at EPA. But right now we're seeing a lot of bills out there on states to reduce the amount of PFAS. We're also seeing a lot that are very related to this, which deal with private drinking water. It was not an issue that was dealt with 5 to 10 years ago, but now more and more people are recognizing that we need to have some oversight on private drinking water systems, including issues such as PFAS. Indoor air quality, so 104 bills on that. 14 on carbon monoxide detectors. Another 10 have to deal with mold. It's getting to be more and more of an issue. It's something we are tracking more and more often. A couple of them I want to highlight here. I will move forward quickly through this so we have questions, but it's Indiana. House Bill 1562 is the one I identified. Provides that a small farm, home-based vendor must complete and pass a food safety training from a list of approved providers. That's a dramatic shift from what we've seen on in the past. The other thing I want to highlight, though, is the popularity of these bills. We're seeing these bills pop up in both red and blue states. This is not something that's a conservative issue or a liberal issue. It's something that both parties are quite supportive of. Oklahoma, House Bill 2152, that one was going to allow the sale of raw milk. That was really going to be a dramatic expansion. New Hampshire, they call it homestead food production. And they're allowing different things. As you can see, they'll allow freeze-dried foods and dehydrated meats if those two bills pass in their food freedom operation. Micro enterprise kitchens, these are the ones I've been identifying. As I said, very popular bills out there. A lot of people, a lot of legislators want to see this issue expand, not retract. So we have quite a bit of work to do in this area. To close out, I want to highlight a couple things. NEHA is going to continue to work on promoting the CDC National Center for Environmental Health budgets and also the budget for FDA's Human Foods Program. We're going to support the environmental health workforce, and we're also, more than anything else, going to support the state, local, tribal, and territorial environmental health agencies and workforce. And for you out there, if you can take a look at this QR code, if you were to highlight this QR code, it'll take you to a page where you can fill out and send a letter to your congressional delegation, your Senate members and your House member, on saying, I support the National Center for Environmental Health at CDC. We also have one for the FDA. This QR code, will allow you to send a message to FDA Human Foods Program. And it would be a direct message, and it's going to highlight the need for the individual congressman, for your congressman, to hear from you, their constituents, that the Human Foods Program, that environmental health at the federal level is very important, and it deserves their support. Final slide is you can see what we're doing out there and more details. Go to the NEHA site and you'll find out about our AEC. With that, do we have any questions, Heather?
I am not seeing any questions right now. If anybody has a question or would like to speak up, I can unmute you if you just send me a message in the chat. Okay. I am not seeing anything, Doug.
Okay, I must have covered everything very effectively then.
You must have.
In closing, to highlight, there's going to be a great deal of, best way I can explain it is machinations going on at the federal level between what the Trump administration wants to do and what they're allowed to do by the courts and what Congress lets them do via congressional appropriations. And there's a long way to go between the continuing resolution and adopting the fiscal year 26 budget, or getting the Trump administration's agenda enacted. Right now, nothing has been enacted. So we're still going to see quite a bit of chaos. That means a lot of environmental health activity that's going to be occurring at the state and local level. As you can see, over 1,000 bills on environmental health are currently going through the process, and we'll see how many come out at the end and get enacted. But it means that it's at the state and local level that we got to keep active and got to keep those members understanding what environmental health does. So a shout out to the affiliates that have Hill days that go down and visit their state capitals. I can't tell you on how important that is, because the members need to hear from you. They want to hear from you. They want to know how their bills are going to affect people. They want to work these things out, and they want to make sure they have good policy. So with that, Heather, turn it back over to you to close us out.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will be posting this recording on our YouTube channel. So if you missed any part of this, just keep an eye out for that. Thanks, everybody. Till next month.
Okay, thank you.